Hello, everybody. Maria Birova here, Clean Health Master Coach and WBFF Pro. Today, I'm going to be joined by Lauren Killey, who is also a WBFF Pro, Clean Health Master Coach, and a coach herself. And we're going to be talking about what you need to know before starting a competition prep. So whether you are a competitor, or an aspiring competitor, or are a coach who coaches predominantly competitors, this is a great video to reference when it comes to figuring out if you're ready to compete. Let's go. Hi, Lauren.
How you going?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm well.
So I just gave a little brief intro to our viewers who are joining us this morning. For you, evening, afternoon for me. But we're going to be diving in full conversation on, what to expect from going into a competition prep, what you need to know, and if you're actually ready to dive into a competition prep to begin with. And as competitors and as coaches that coach competitors, it sometimes comes to the point where we have to tell our clients, hey, you're not ready yet, right? So before we dive into talking about those specifics, when it comes to competing in general, what would you say are some of the top 2 or 3 things that need to be taken into consideration before joining the glamorous world, right, of competing?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, this is the thing. Like, people do see the kind of glamorous side without realizing that it's still a very testing thing to put your mind and your body through. So I think before you do consider stepping on a stage, you really have to make sure you are mentally and physically in the right place, like
yes,
healthy. So what I mean by that is, you've not just come out of an extended period of dieting. You've had a decent amount of time eating enough food. Your body is in a nice, healthy place physically. You understand things like dieting as well, because it is really, it's not just a sort of basic diet. You are taking your body to a place that's unsustainable, no matter what category you're in. So it's being able to understand the basics of dieting, so you can take it to that next level with a competition prep. So, that's one of them, is just making sure you're in that kind of healthy place. Understanding what's involved completely is the other one. So, so many people, we find, they get into comp prep and they don't quite realize what's involved or how testing it's going to be, or potentially at times even, restrictive. Sometimes sacrifices do have to be made, and it can be challenging on relationships and things like that. So doing research beforehand and knowing what's involved, I think, is really helpful. And then I suppose, like, that last kind of point is, just like understanding the federation, understanding the brand, understanding who you compete with as well. What do they want? What are they looking for? What's your show day going to look like?
Yeah.
All of that sort of stuff is really good.
Exactly, because every federation has their own requirements and expectations. So it's really important that, if you are looking to compete in a specific federation, looking into a coach that will know the ins and outs of that federation and really help you from the very beginning to the day you step on stage to be fully prepared. But I think one of the things I would like for us to start on is talking about that foundation. People look at the glamour of competing and don't necessarily understand how much of a full-time job and time commitment is actually going to take, and what kind of foundation is needed before starting a competition prep. So let's chat about that. What would you say are some of the fundamentals of your foundation that is needed in order to say, hey, you know what, you are ready to start your prep?
Cool. So when we speak to our clients, we talk about what we call the 3 pillars. So, like, the 3 major foundations that you need to have mastered before you start prepping. And that's tracking. So it's being able to track your food, track your weight, track data, to be able to provide a coach. So tracking is one. Training, we want to be able to master training, movement, form, understanding training, that sort of stuff. And then the final one is just the health factor, your biofeedback markers, so you want to make sure that you're not dieting, you are in a healthy place. Your energy is where it should be, your mindset is where it should be. You're not necessarily in a situation in life where you're about to move house, or you're coming into a wedding, or something that's going to be really challenging. So also having those kind of like biofeedback markers, those health markers on point. I'd say that's the key foundation you want to be working on before you start a prep.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something really important too about when it comes to being data driven. When it comes to a competition prep, you are very rigid and very precise. It's not just, I'm just going to eat in a deficit generally and just move my measured and managed. manage very accurately, especially if you have a really good coach that's helping you do so, because you're going to be probably prepping anywhere between 15 plus weeks, right? 15, 20, 25, depending on your preference and where you're at. But I do think that it's really, another point to add to that is that emotional well-being. Are you mentally in a place where you can handle tracking all of that data, mentally able to see maybe scale fluctuations, saying no to things, knowing that even if life is throwing punches, because you maybe experienced this too, but I prepped all of last year and life didn't stop. There were some things that were in life that were like, oh, I don't care, you're on prep, boom, right? So are you mentally able to say, even with this going on, I can still prioritize checking off my non-negotiables? And I think sometimes that becomes very overlooked, right? Because it looks so easy. And so you dive into it and it's like, there are going to be days where you last thing you have in you is to prioritize the time and effort for that, but you owe it to yourself to do it. So it's like that will and drive to continue pushing, especially when all odds are against you, because it happens so often on prep, whether it's huge life occurrences or just inconveniences here and there, right? So how do you help your clients out when it comes to really overcoming those inconveniences and life occurrences while on a prep? Because some of them are inevitable, right?
Yes, absolutely. Like you say, life's going to happen whether you like it or not, unfortunately. So yeah, I think there's a lot that kind of goes into that. One thing we do say to our clients, and then part of it is just making sure that they're ready before they get into that actual prep into a stage, right? But we say the stage doesn't care what's happening in life. The stage only cares what you bring on the day. That's it. It doesn't care if you've had a tough day. It doesn't care if you've had something really awful happen to you. It doesn't care. Yeah. You know, you're being judged on that day with what you bring to the stage. That's it. So being able to attack every day, knowing that what you do that day, even if it is 20 weeks out, or, you know, for some people, even if it's 9 months out, it's going to accumulate to your result on that day, that one single day. So making sure you're able to attack anything that comes up kind of happens in that, it's like that pre-prep phase. It's that before you start your cut stage, it's like you should be working on nailing down the foundations of prep so that you get practice. Because it will happen, life will happen. So you want to practice it. You know, things will go wrong. You know, you'll have a social occasion that pops up that you weren't planning and you want to go, but you haven't been able to figure out your food for that. It's like, cool, we don't want to be figuring that out 4 weeks out from the stage. No. We want to be doing that a year out. So we can work through it together with the coach, understand how to manage that situation. So as best as we can, learning prior, things will still happen that are out of our control. 100%. And then we do say to them, it's about knowing, like life isn't fun. Sometimes it's awful. But it's knowing when it is out of our control and when it's not. Because there's a difference between, I could change something here. Like, I could do something about it. I just don't want to. So I'm going to let this become an excuse. Yeah. Or this is completely out of my control. Like we've had situations. We had one client, who was prepping for a show and she was on a tiny island over in Europe and they had a volcano going off. Literally like a volcano going off. There was like, she was sending us videos of like the lava going down some of the streets and things like that. And her gym was on one of those streets. So she was like, I can't go to the gym today. So that's a situation where we're like, that's fine. Like you don't have to work around that, girl. Gosh. There's lava near your gym, you know, like that's a big extenuating circumstance out of your control. And it's just about saying, okay, that's fine. Like if you really want to go and get a banded workout done at home, you can still do something, but you don't have to get to the gym today. So having a coach who can help you understand when it is okay and when it's just an excuse is also really helpful.
It's about taking full responsibility, because no matter what happens during prep or during show day or placings, it's not, to an extent, yes, it is you and your coach, it's teamwork, but you are responsible for execution. And if you're falling short of execution, it's not your coach's fault you're not coming in the way you want to look or you place the way you place, to a certain extent. Now, if your coach is well versed in the divisions and the federation and providing you the tools that you need, but you're simply lacking that responsibility of, you know, hitting that compliance or being resourceful, where if you can't do something, to reach out and be transparent, you're only falling short of your own success. And I've mentioned this before in our previous, competitive live that we did. what you do every single day is going to make you feel the most confident that you've ever felt when you're on stage. No matter what federation, what competition, you know that if you emptied the tank and did everything in your possible ability to do, you'll know you stepped that stage knowing there's nothing you left on the table. But if you're shortcutting cardio, skipping meals, or having extra stuff, and you're only cheating yourself, and you're going to feel that the day of, due to just the amount of stress and comparison, you're going to be like, shit, I wish I did that extra 10 minutes that were added to my cardio or whatever it may be. So just being real that it's, you're in control most of the time. 80 to 90% of the time. So, again, life happens all the time. Now, one of the other things I wanted us to chat about specifically is you have, let's say we have new clients coming to us, someone's interested in competing. How do you know if they are ready to actually dive into a competition prep physically? So that's a common thing that I started encountering, you know, starting to coach competitive athletes for the WBFF specifically. So how do you know you're ready to go into a competition prep? You mentally might be ready, but your body might not. How do you go about figuring that out?
First step is knowing what category that client might want to compete in, because the category is then going to dictate things. Really, like if we're competing in bikini, it's a lesser amount of muscle, it's a lesser amount of condition than, say, you know, you go up to fitness, which is more muscle, more condition. So even if that client has got that mentality, that drive, that grit, and they're ready to go for it, and they're ready to go even, you know, for the top of the top, like let's get as conditioned as possible and like let's go for gold, their body has to be able to do that, and they have to have the amount of muscle they need for that category. They have to be able to get to that level of condition as well, for their chosen category. So muscle is just looking obviously at their shape and where they're at, and the right, you know, the right shapes too, you know, making sure we've got, you know, the lats and the delts and the glutes to create those bikini curves without having too much muscle. Or, you know, and in wellness, and you'll be able to speak to this, you know, more so, it's like having those strong legs and like, you know, having like killer glutes and yeah, so like being able to look at the client's like structure and their shape and their muscle and see if they're enough, you know, that's going to be one key factor there. The capacity to be able to kind of like diet into a show, so like, you know, to bring the condition that they need to be able to bring, will come from, you know, we'll know honestly with how their body's been responding in, say, a pre-prep phase. If a client hasn't been able to eat or get food in for a decent amount of time, you know, they're probably going to find it's going to be challenging to diet down quite hard. So looking at how they're responding with their food, how their body is responding with their food, would be kind of like a key factor around condition, I would say. Yeah, so those are kind of the two big things, the shape and the condition.
Yeah, and I would also be to touch on that is the genetics too, right? You may think you're in category, but once you start dieting and training, you might shape into another. And you know, I made that transition myself because just of the way I like to train, and I stuck to that and I followed that, and my body transitioned from, you know, I became pro as a bikini model, but ended up growing into wellness and winning a wellness title. Never did I expect it. I actually wasn't shocked that that even happened, but that's why I feel like to have coaches, posing coaches, you know, actual prep coaches who know the federation, who say, no, I know you want to be there, but you're not, right? So it's really important to let your body pick the category for you. Don't, if you want to fight it, in a way you can fight it in the sense of, you know, one day I want to be a figure competitor. Well, that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of years of training, but we can grow into that if you're, that's the goal, right? Or, you know, hey, if I wanted to stay in bikini, I had to pull back lower body training. I just didn't want to do that. So you have to kind of pick what you enjoy doing as an athlete, and then also aligning that with your coach and communicating where you see yourself growing into so that you can have a set game plan. Because I've seen that, you know, even within our federation and other federations, you need to be in the right category. And sometimes there's like in-betweens, then you do both and you figure out where you belong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What would you say when it comes to, you know, one of the biggest misconceptions about competition preps, and we touched on it in the beginning, social media makes everything look glamorous, right? They don't really show too much. I try a little, and I know you try as well. When shit hits the fan, you know, it happens to the best of us. To be completely honest, it happens more often than not. What do you think, what would you say to any newbie competitor that's looking to compete, or to coaches to advise to their clients? are some common misconceptions that we need to be aware of before diving into that prep?
Yeah, cool. The big one I would say is the thought that prep is going to be fun all the way through, right? You'll have a good time at times, but sometimes it's going to suck. It really is. Like, I've been doing this for like close to 10 years now, and like almost 14 preps now. I can tell you every single prep I reach a point where I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
This sucks every time because it's hard.
That's it. But then you overcome that feeling.
Yeah.
Everybody hits that wall. You will hit that wall. No.
Yeah, 100%. It's a day where like you're hungry, you're tired, like things aren't going your way. Like you said before, life's throwing all this stuff at you, and you're still gonna get the work done whether you like it or not. And it's like, oh, why? Why am I choosing to do this again? You know?
Yeah.
And you get over it, and you're like, there's a reason, because that feeling is absolutely incredible, and that empowerment that comes with achieving a goal is incredible. So it's just going into it knowing it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be fun. It is challenging, and there's a reason why not everyone competes. So that's the first one. The other one is we can try and take as much of a balanced approach as we want, but at some point you're gonna have to sacrifice something, right? Whether it be social eating out, whether it be going and having drinks with the girls, whether it be a date night, you know, out at a restaurant with your partner. Like usually it's around food, but sometimes even around physical activities. Like we have people who like do horse riding and things like that in their spare time, and as we get closer to show, we're like, you're at a high risk of injury. So you just understand, like, if you continue, of course we never tell people they can't, but if you continue, you're risking injury. And some of these people have been on a prep for literally 2 years for a show. So we're like, don't lose 2 years of work because of this, you know, maybe take a step back for just the last few weeks. So there'll be things in life that will be better off taking a step back from to make your prep easier. And sometimes you'll have to make it a priority. You know, when calories get lower, which they will inevitably, we need accuracy. And eating out at restaurants isn't accurate. Alcohol, it doesn't, outside of socializing, it doesn't actually have any positive benefits. So it's not going to serve us. So it's knowing that you're going to have to make sacrifices going into it, and be okay with that when you start.
I agree. I think that's a common thing where, you know, some people are just genetically blessed and can be flexible and not even diet, and their body shapes up. Some of us, majority of us, are not. And it takes a lot of freaking work. And again, depending on the category, depending on the work that's needed, for a majority of the part, whether you're going to just benefit from being a bit more rigid, or you actually, you know, pedal to the floor, it's time to be like cutting it down. And, you know, sometimes I do see this often where there is a fine line between dangerous preps where you're like on little to no food, excessive amounts of cardio. That's a red flag, probably even be prepping. But there will be points of, especially if you're cognitively saying to your coach and choosing consciously, I understand what this is going to entail, I still want to continue prepping. You might get to a point where the calories are not sustainable. The cardio is not sustainable. The training is not sustainable. But that's the thing that you have to accept from the beginning, is your body's going to respond different prep to prep. And I say this because for anybody listening, or whether you're coach or competitor, whatever it may be, for example, if you're prepping back-to-back shows, I did that. Each show prep got so much harder diet-wise because I never gave myself a chance to take a break. So I started off, you know, deficit on higher intake. By my last show, I don't even want to say how much I was eating because it was not sustainable. When I got out of that, I had to jump into a point where I had to put on a little extra weight, and I did a recovery diet. I actually didn't care about the weight on the scale. I just needed to fix my metabolic rate and just get out of that hole, right? But you have to understand there will be times where you're going to be really hungry and you're going to be very tired. And in order to get to that conditioning and to get your body responding, we have to be there for a little bit. It kind of leeways into that next conversation I want to have with you, is that, you know, the fact that prep doesn't end on show day, that prep continues afterwards. And I think one of the common misconceptions are that once you get shredded for show day, that lasts for months on end and you can stay jacked. And talk to me a little bit about the realities of that and how you help your clients navigate that post-show period.
Yeah, it isn't sustainable. Even when we are, you know, at what we say is the bikini level, which is not as much condition as some of those other categories. Genetically, yes, for some people it's easier to get there, but it still shouldn't be a sustainable place. And it's not just in the physical, your body, you know, that your body can't stay there. It's what you have to do to stay there. So, you know, things do get restrictive, calories do get lower. We do have to do more steps or cardio or output in some way. It becomes all consuming, and you don't want to stay in that place for life, that all-consuming place of like, I need to do my cardio, I need to do my steps, I need to track my food accurately to make sure I'm eating the right amount day to day. Like, I can't go to this social occasion because my calories are on the lower ends. And yes, we can reverse diet and we can stay leaner, but, and especially for the female body, it's not healthy either to stay very, very lean year round. It can start to impact health markers. It can, for some women, even start to impact their period, which has detrimental long-term effects. You know, your energy will downregulate, your libido will downregulate, like all of these things will carry over to impact relationships. So the cost of being leaner year round isn't worth it. It's just not.
Not at all. And I think social media, that's a common misconception because of the way social media portrays, you know, shredded competitors, you know, top athletes. And most of the time, I know this myself, we all do photo shoots, right? Yeah. And we use those shoots year round. I promise you, if you look at any recent training videos, I'm nowhere as lean. And
like, I'm the same, girl, don't worry.
Like, wait, what happened? Is that really you? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, you do understand that a majority, ideally, I'm going to be at this body fat percentage. And that's about a week or two, because I don't want to sustain the amount of effort it takes to get there, because it's not optimal. It's not healthy. It's not enjoyable. And I think one of the biggest things to know is that if you're going to go into a competition prep, or if you're a coach, you need to preface this, is that after prep, you need a plan of a time where you're coaching that client. You need to be ready for the mental downfall, the raise in body fat, the way your body's going to change. You've been on such a dopamine high going into the show, and then boom, you literally jump off a cliff and face plant of being like, now what? Right? You've lost, loss of purpose. It's like a whole thing. And we can talk about this on a different live, but you need to be ready for that, because it's not all fun and games. No matter if you win, no matter if you don't place, whatever happens, everybody hits that fall after chemically in our brains. You're going 100 miles per hour and then brakes, right? You're like, whoa, what the heck just happened? So I really do think that that's a common thing that needs to be said. Now, this is not really prep related, but more so expenses. How much it actually takes to compete. And I think that sometimes people think you make a lot of money by competing. Let me tell you, more money is than it is winning shows like that. And I want us to kind of go back and forth on that. So there's a realistic expectation of how much of an investment, not just time, mental and physical, but also financially it could be. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's not cheap. Like my partner Jack and I would have multiple houses by now, probably, if I didn't compete. Like, and you don't earn money from competing. It can get very expensive. Now, of course, like the budget is changeable depending on how you do it. The first few years when I started competing, I made my own bikinis just to save some money, you know, because I was very young. I was at uni and working part-time jobs. So I was like, I'll make my bikinis. So you can save in some ways, but look, you have to obviously account for registration costs, hair and makeup costs, tan costs, with whatever competition you do. And they're going to range depending on the country, the show, the federation. Then you've got to account for, you know, like in WBFF, for example, like stage gowns, registration gowns, your shoes, things like that. And then like everything that's involved in competing too. People forget that your coaching really technically is part of that prep. Your food is part of that prep. If you're traveling, that's part of prep. Like this is where it all really starts to add up. So go into it and do some research first, and every nitty gritty detail, right? Down to like, you know, if you're going to be traveling to another country or another state, like account for the Uber drives to and from the hotel, and account for all the tiny things, because so many people do get closer to that showtime and start to realize all these costs are coming, and they're like, oh God, I can't afford this. And then the stress sets in, and the stress impacts their prep, and it becomes this awful cycle. So it can get very expensive competing.
And competitors can build success through what they do with their successes with competing, not necessarily the competitions themselves, no matter the federation that you do. So it really comes down to understanding that competing is a hobby. It is a sport. Okay. It's something that is curricular. You're choosing to do it. You're not forced to do it. So don't feel that pressure if you can't financially afford it or don't enjoy the prep. That's fine, right? Everybody has their niche. Everybody has a choice of how to spend their money and how to budget accordingly and what they choose to spend their time on. Don't feel this immense amount of pressure being like, you know, I need to do it and I need to go all out and this, and thinking that once you compete, it's like all glam afterwards and you're making not the case. And that's a common misconception. When I first started competing, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to win these big prizes. And no, the money comes from how you leverage your success. That's where the money comes. So I really recommend taking that into consideration and budget before diving into a prep and say, hey, is this really worth it? Like, am I going to get a good return of investment of my time, money, and effort? So that's just the real thing that nobody talks about. Yeah. But it's expensive. Yeah, it's very and then another thing I wanted to touch on would be like when it comes to presentation, how important that is and how you need to be practicing presentation, because sometimes it gets overlooked. It doesn't matter if that's important, because guess what? Like you mentioned earlier, they don't care about how hard your prep was. They don't care about how much work you've put in and the grind. They don't care because they don't know, right? They show them, and in that day they're seeing so many people coming, so you need to bring that wow, like you need to snag that attention, because you're competing against all these men and women depending on the federation, the category, whatever you're competing in for that title, that placing. So talk to us a little bit about what, you know, an importance of posing and why it should be prioritized at the beginning of prep, if not year round.
Well, the thing is, everyone's going to try and bring a competitive physique. Everyone. So you're going to be standing on stage with all of these other people who have worked just as hard to bring the best physique they can. So it's like, how do you stand out from that? If everyone's got an impressive physique, how do you stand out? That's your presentation. You know, you have to be able to one, stand out with your confidence, your flow, your movement in any federation or any brand. Doesn't matter, you know, you've got to be able to do it in that way. Like different bodybuilding federations will have specific poses and things they want to see, but you know, there's still a difference between someone who simply does the movement and someone who does the movement with that energy, passion, and that person's going to stand out on stage. So it's about drawing the eye with that capacity to bring that. Well, it's a magnetic energy. You know, it's star power, really. It's that star power energy. But then also presentation head to toe, you know, making sure that you are just polished, you know, your hair's polished. Men, if they've got beards, like they're cut down and they're just looking nice, they're not looking too messy. And women, obviously, hair, makeup, everything's kind of tied in together, making sure you've got the requirements of your chosen federation, so like the right bikinis and shoes and things like that, because it's these tiny details that will make the difference between the person who wins and the person who doesn't. And not many people are doing it just for fun, you know, like it's like we all want to do well, and deep down, even if we start with the intention just to do it for fun, we find, you know, we have so many competitors who say they want to tick it off the bucket list and they just want to see what it's like and have fun. Every single one of them, when they get closer to show day, they're like, I want to do well, I want to place, I want to win, you know. Your competitive nature comes out, and so, you know, you don't put in all this time and effort just to skimp on the things like the posing, the presentation, and the things that are going to allow you to also show your body in the right way. You know, show off your muscles, highlight your strengths, and if need be, hide your weaknesses, so you can do it with like with strategy in mind.
Yes, agreed. And that's why things like practicing your posing routines, practicing, you know, your presentation, things like your hair, your makeup, you know, especially for women, it's a little bit more glam, right? The men have clean up haircuts and things like that. But when it comes to hair, makeup, those are things where at the beginning, and this was a misconception I had, where it doesn't really matter. But from show to show, when you see different looks, what looks better? Tight curls, loose curls, dark makeup, light makeup. It needs to suit you and your package that you're bringing, right? You can't, you know, and sometimes if you're neck and neck with someone, those little things can actually be the deciding factor. Which person had that 1% wow? Is it the suit sparkle? Is it the gown? Did you put in extra time to get a wow gown? Because your body have been putting you in the first place. But when it comes, like I'm talking specifically for our federation, because we have gowns, team wear, maybe your gown just was like, there's no way we can crown or award that gown. We need to give it to that. It really comes down to, again, the investments of making sure checking off all those boxes and that they do matter. They do matter. And with posing, I honestly think that, you know, depending on the federation, again, gonna hype up ours because it allows you to really be you. You don't have to be the same as the person behind you. Be you, and that's gonna really snag that attention, and you're gonna shine so bright on that stage. So practicing posing is something that needs to be added to your routine, and you're probably gonna have to do it more than you think. You'll do your first show and you'll be like, oh shit, you know, I got to start doing this like every day, right?
Absolutely.
And then, you know, to tie everything all together, I have a few questions in the question box, but if you had to say 2 to 3 things as a takeaway of, you know, what are some things that you should walk away from this live from when it comes to, hey, you're on the fence about competing, and these are the things that you need to accept before diving into it, what would those 2 to 3 takeaways be for you?
Cool. Okay. My first one that I say to people all the time is competing is a privilege. You need to understand going into it, right? To be able to choose to compete, to be able to choose to put our body through an intense dieting period and an intensely stressful period is a privilege, because there are people around the world who don't have access to food and they're hungry, whether they like it or not. There's people who financially could never even dream of doing that because they're struggling to get by day to day. They're dealing with physical and mental stresses that are like having them, you know, fighting for their life on a day-to-day basis. So do not go into a prep and play victim mentality around your prep. Do not complain about it. Do not be that person who's like, this is awful, this is ruining my life, I don't want to do this. It's that you can step away from it at any point. No one's forcing you. It's a choice.
You are choosing to put yourself through it. Nobody's saying do it or else, right? You are making that decision. Don't get us wrong. You will find times where you're struggling and you don't feel like doing things, but check your privilege in that sense. Literally. Like you really are having a hard time and are mentally, pull yourself out. There's no reason to compromise it over a trophy, a sash, a crown, a medal. There's no reason for it. You should be competing because you enjoy the preps, you enjoy the challenge, you enjoy the discipline, you enjoy everything that comes into it, even when it's hard, right? Even when you're struggling. But again, if you're on that borderline where you're compromising your well-being, financial, anything like that, stop. There's no you're no less of a person for not competing.
Exactly. You don't have to enjoy it. You don't have to do it. That's the thing. I think people, they get so caught up in the glamour and the image. They're like, no, I have to do this. And it's like, if you want to be that person, that glamorous person, the person that's owning their health and fitness journey, you don't necessarily have to compete to do that. If you hate the process and you hate competing and it's not for you, and you're finding your body's just not like really like not working with it either, like, pull out of that prep, but keep doing the things. Keep doing the prep things. Keep becoming that person. Go and do the photo shoot and the glitz and glam and that, and find a way to do it for you. You don't have to try and fit yourself into a box that just isn't going to work, or try and be like someone else, you know? So do it. Find out if you enjoy the process, because you're right. You have to enjoy it to an extent. I say us competitors are a special kind of crazy because we enjoy the suffering, you know? So, you know, you're going to be that special kind of crazy to really enjoy it. And then, go for gold if you do. So you've really got to go into it at least once to figure out if you do like it. Commit yourself to it, you know, like if you're healthy and you're okay and it's not impacting your life in a very, very negative way, like commit to that process, get it done. And then if you don't enjoy it, you don't have to do it again. But if you do, then remind yourself that it's a privilege every single time you get to do it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways anybody watching should take away. Because at the end of the day, like we said, you choose to do this and it's a privilege to do so. And hey, if it's your thing, it's your thing. If it's not, you tried, you checked it off the list, and you're like on to something else, right? I would also say the best thing to do is, you're interested in competing, reach out to coaches, out to people in the industry, in those federations, competitors, coaches, look things up, do your research beforehand. And really, I would say the best advice you could get is reaching out to an actual competitor who's doing these shows, because they'll be real and honest with you, because there's a lot of stuff that won't be shown online, won't be shown through the federation. It's the nitty gritty of prep is going to come down to the competitor. And, you know, if you have a really good coach, very transparent with you. So do your research, and honestly, if you're going to invest anywhere, invest in a good coach. A good coach really make or break your prep experience and your competitive experience. So, and do the research for coaches, and really, you don't always need to click and stay with the same coach. You can, you know, figure out who's the best for you, but once you find your person, stick with that person, no matter the outcome. That's my last takeaway is, just because you didn't win at the first show does not mean it's a bad coach or you're not ready. Like, it takes time. Trust your coach. If you like the way that they coach you, their ethics, their vibe, stick with them and trust them, because that will take you way further than, oh, I'm not happy with the way I place next coach. Oh, I'm not happy with the way, and it's going to make it a little harder for you. That's just my opinion.
You know, I agree with you. Yeah, because every time you start with a new coach, you have to start again. That coach has to learn your body. They have to learn your mentality. They have to learn your triggers. So you're taking a little step back in your journey, and you're not continuing to progress. You've got to go sometimes to another coach and learn and find your home, so to speak, right? But, you know, if it is simply because of the result, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot just a little bit.
That's the reason why. It's that your coach starts to learn your body, and when that happens, it's like gold, right? And then you can work together to figure out how to really propel your success. And we're going to go into, there's a few questions that we have from our viewers. This one being, which federation or competition would be the best entry point for a novice or mature entrant? And I have an answer. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, cool. Look, I'm going to say, like, I don't ever want, one, age to be a limiting factor, and two, I don't ever want people to feel just because they're a novice they have to start somewhere. I'm like, if you want to be the best, like, start how you mean to go on. You know, if you want to compete in, like, say, you know, WBFF, which is our federation, we often have people say, oh, I feel like I'm not going to be able to. I'm nervous. Maybe I should start in an easier federation. I'm like, no. If that's what you want, then go for it. Because if you're not competing in the federation you want to compete in, you're not progressing in that journey. You're going to get in there, start getting the feedback, and start progressing. So I say the best federation to start in for a novice is the one that you want to be a part of. So go and look at the different federations, look at what kind of vibe you like, look at the physiques and the kind of physique that either A, works to your body, or B, you want to work towards. And obviously one that offers, you know, an age category that suits you. But at the same time, as I said, like, I don't think age should ever be a limiting factor, ever. You know, it doesn't matter. You can go and, like, if you're older, you can whoop all the young girls' asses, you know, like, age isn't going to stop you. And so find the one that you think is going to be the one for you, and then go for it. It doesn't matter if you're a first timer.
Yeah, and I touched on this at the beginning about, you know, and age limits. A lot of federations, I mean, the WBFF has 35 and up, 40 and up, considering adding another division. We have crown champions who are 55 and up. Like, you're not too old to compete. And I will say that it all depends on your commitment to the prep, and you'd be surprised at the age of some of these competitors. And it's never too late to start a prep either. Although a lot of competitors, depending on the division 2, can be quite younger, that doesn't mean that if you are a little bit older that it's out of your scope, you're too old for it. I would say, on the contrary, you have more muscle maturity, your look is different. That's why federations like the WBFF include these categories that are tailored to those type of physiques as well. So just do your research on the federations, and you'd be surprised how many of them include, like, masters or age divisions as well. Then we have another question. This is more specific about meal frequency. Does meal frequency matter, 3 versus 4 to 5, if calories and macros are equal?
Ooh, cool question. Look, I'm going to say, to be quite honest, it does depend on that individual, right? Yeah. Because some individuals, their life circumstance just doesn't allow them to, say, eat 6 meals a day. They just can't do it. You know, we've had people who are in, like, surgery, like, all day. You know, it's like, you can't keep saying, excuse me, I just got to duck out and get my meal, I'll be back. You know, they're on that table for, like, working at that table for, like, 12, 16 plus hours. So it's like, okay, for that person, you're eating when you can eat. And that's the ideal for you. For others, they need more frequent meals, like one to help with hunger, you know, having meals spread out throughout the day, but I'd say more so from that mental perspective of hunger rather than the physical, you know, because we tend to say the larger meals spread out longer are going to actually keep you more satiated for longer than eating lots of little things constantly throughout the day. So meal frequency, we want to try and especially as we get to the deeper parts of prep, organize our meals around our training, you know, so that we're able to get through our training sessions, recover from our training sessions, you know, and sometimes even make sure we're getting in kind of like a decent meal, not too close to bedtime, but later on in the day, so that we're able to sleep and rest properly. But honestly, outside of that, to me, the ideal meal frequency is the one that's going to work for your schedule and that you can stick to. Yeah.
And it really also depends on how your body responds to intake, and it's really client dependent. You see the whole 5-6 meals a day needs to be, not, you know, old school bodybuilding talk right there. But again, it just depends on your body and the way your coach is approaching your nutrition. So it depends, right? I wouldn't say a hard, like you need to do this. You don't really need to do anything sometimes, but other than that, I do appreciate everybody who joined us live and has stayed on live. Lauren, thank you for having this conversation with me. I'm really excited for us to dive in deeper into further topics. For anybody watching, if you guys have recommendations or want to hear something specific that Lauren and I are gonna want us to go over, either comment them on the replay post of this or message us at any time. If you have questions about competing, especially when it comes to the WBFF, I am a message away. Lauren is a message away. We are here to help you. Do not be afraid to reach out to the people who are competing. Most of them should be as nice as us, okay? And if not, you know, we will never turn away.
Exactly.
But again, thank you guys so much for joining us, Lauren. I cannot wait to have another conversation with you. And just a little sneak peek for everybody who stood on till the end of the live. Keep a lookout for an announcement about when you can potentially come and see us live. We have a very exciting announcement coming about our live events. I know a lot of our students have been asking about it. We kind of shifted things up a little bit. And if you want to learn directly from us, meet us and other industry leaders in the fitness industry. You guys keep a lookout because announcements are coming soon. Lauren, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, darling.
Bye.
See you soon.